Greetings, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of the Pan Future Society podcast. Today is Saturday, October 14th, 2017. I have a cool interview this week coming up with aerospace engineer Mike Paul Hughes. Mike and I go back a few years to some musical projects in Denver when we both lived there. Mike is now living in the Los Angeles area, and we talked a lot about the work he's currently doing, some upcoming cool space missions, and we got to some speculation about life in the universe and what might happen after humans are gone. So that's coming right up. Before we get to that, the one thing I want to hit off the top this week, another case of horrible science headline writing by journalists who don't know what they're talking about. This week you might have heard the story that the supervolcano in Yellowstone is going to erupt soon and wipe out all life on Earth. No, it's not. In fact, of all of the major sources I saw reporting this story, only Forbes got it right, and of course Snopes did a follow-up explaining how everyone else got it completely wrong. Some new studies have shown that chemical markers that are present before an eruption, which were previously thought to become visible centuries perhaps before an eruption of that supervolcano, now appear that they may only appear a decade or two before an eruption. So if you were studying the area where the supervolcano is in Yellowstone and you notice these chemical markers occurring, there may actually be much less time to prepare for it than we previously thought. What was not true about any of this was that somebody said the volcano is going to erupt soon and wipe out all life on Earth. That is completely wrong, and 99% of the news outlets out there completely blew this story. Completely. I will keep saying completely because that's the only word for it. And frankly, it's just outright irresponsible to get your science reporting this wrong. It is damaging to civilization because everybody hears this story and everybody says, oh, this is going to blow up and kill us all. And it's not. And then when somebody finally, the truth finally catches up with the misinformation, then everybody says, whoa, science is wrong. Scientists don't know what they're talking about. It's not the scientists. It's the idiot journalists who get the stories wrong and just want clickbait headlines. So, man, there are some valid science sources out there, and surprisingly, Forbes seems to be one of them. The other main news headlines, I mean, even if you see CBS or ABC or CNN reporting on science, try to go to the original source and see what they're really talking about, because so many of them get it wrong. And after all that, the summary is, no, we're not going to all die tomorrow because the supervolcano blows up. And with that, let's get to our interview. Oh, and one more quick thing before I run the interview. I had some technical difficulty. I believe my internet connection is kind of crappy sometimes, so the audio quality is not that great for most of this. I think it's fine. Yeah, I mean, you'll be able to understand it, but it's not as good as I usually like to have it. But bear with me, and I think you'll enjoy the interview anyway. There were a few times when things totally cut out, and you might hear a funny edit or two. But as always, we just carry on and get on with the show. Well, everyone, thanks for tuning in this week. And I have an interview for you with Mike Paul Hughes, aerospace engineer, currently with NASA JPL. And but just as a disclaimer, Mike is here to offer his own opinions and not necessarily those of NASA JPL or anyone else, etc., the usual thing. Hi, Mike, and welcome to the show.
Thanks, Sean. Yeah, that's right. I'm not a spokesperson for NASA or the Jet Propulsion Laboratory.
Yeah.
I do a lot of cool stuff. I'm sure there's something.
Yeah. So aerospace engineer is a pretty broad term. Narrow it down for us as to what you've done in the past and what you're currently doing.
Well, most of my career has been in guidance, navigation, and controls. And that's a particular skill set within aerospace engineering. Lately, I've been more of a systems engineer, a manager, and entry, descent, and landing, which is another discipline. So, yeah, guidance, navigation, and controls is the part of the spacecraft that keeps track of the trajectory, the position, the velocity, and the speed, the direction, the rotations, the rates, all of those things. So that was my background.
Okay. How much of that work is hardware and how much is software? Are you involved in both sides of that?
That's one of the unique and special things about guidance, navigation, and control, in that the discipline naturally takes you into hardware and software, and electrical and mechanical. So some of the systems engineers, the great systems engineers, have started in guidance, navigation, and controls because of that, because it gets you touching different parts of this.
Are you allowed to share what you're working on now?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. NASA is it's government, but it's paid for by the taxpayers, and there's no classified work in NASA. Now there is work that is is competitive or it's early that I wouldn't be able to reveal, but I can tell you what I'm working on.
Yeah.
I'm working on two projects. One of them is called Project Starshade, and the idea of the other one's called Europa Clipper.
Okay.
Project Starshade the idea there is to create an artificial eclipse of the nearest stars, the ones that we see in the night sky when we go outside and look up on a summer's night. Eclipse them with a spacecraft, and then view them with like a Hubble-class telescope, space telescope, in the shadow of the star, so that you can view the planets orbiting that star.
Yeah.
Just as you, during a total solar eclipse, you can see the planets Venus and Mercury up there. With the stars, you would be able to see planets orbiting our nearest neighbors. It's in formulation. It's way off.
Yeah.
It's a long way before it becomes a flight project. Launches, it'll be out 2026, 2028, perhaps.
And that's
the other.
You mentioned that's a Hubble-class sort of telescope, so it would be working the visual spectrum?
Yes, visual and infrared.
Okay. Very cool.
Yeah, near infrared is where they do like the Jupiter science.
Yeah.
And in the blue is where you're going to be looking for the Earth-like planets. So yeah, that's what I'm doing there, Sean. I'm like looking for the planets around other stars. It's like
yeah, that's great. Well, maybe you'll find one we can go to soon. I recently talked with an astrophysicist named Steve Kilston. I don't know if you've ever run across that name, but he has a well thought out plan for a generation ship to travel to another star system. It's a very long term plan. But finding a place to go is one of the most important aspects of that project. And I'm looking forward. I always look forward to more and more planets. When I was a kid, we weren't even sure there were other planets out there. Now it seems planets are the norm and they're everywhere.
Yeah, but they're hard to detect. Like trying to see the reflected light from a fly that is sitting on the rim of a train's headlamp.
Right.
The light difference, in order to see the the planet, you need to suppress the light from the star by 10 orders of magnitude.
Mm-hmm.
That's just a really hard thing to do. So that's why we, have this extreme technique.
Yeah.
Flying a telescope in formation with a sun shield, essentially a star field, star shade.
And there was another project you were involved in?
Yeah, the other one is Europa Clipper.
Right.
And Europa Clipper is a mission to fly a spacecraft many times around the second moon of Jupiter. The moon's called Europa. Mm-hmm. Because it's believed from previous missions, that's Voyager and Galileo, that there's a liquid water ocean beneath the ice on Europa. Mm-hmm. And we want to prove that, and we want to find out how easy it is to access that water and what it takes to melt a spacecraft through the ice and explore that ocean. Mm-hmm. So Europa is a way towards looking for life in our own solar system.
Mm-hmm. Does the Clipper project have a lander portion of it itself, or is it looking into the feasibility for future missions like the Huygens probe was?
Yeah, there's a lander portion, but the lander portion, I don't believe was in the president's budget, and I'm not really sure. I should say much about what's going to happen with lander.
All right.
No, I'm not working on the lander part.
Okay.
But the Clipper part it's in Phase B, which means that it's in preliminary design, mm-hmm. Where we're working out the requirements and the subsystem and getting the team ready to do the critical design. And following that is integration and test, and then of course launch. Mm-hmm. So we're several years away from launch.
Yeah.
With Clipper.
Yeah.
Unlike Star, which is in formulation, it's still like in the. Imagine if it was a movie, it's still, in the screenplay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Where Europa Clipper is in pre-production.
Mm-hmm.
We're hiring actors, we're setting up doing setting location, scout location. There's a lot of similarities between making films and making spacecraft, I've learned.
Oh, yeah.
In Hollywood.
Yeah. You mentioned budget, and I guess that would be a good segue. Of course, as a layman, all the topics I've researched for my show, it's a recurring theme that there's just not enough money being put toward these projects, or there could be more. You don't want to spend money foolishly, but I think people don't understand how much of a long-term process this is, that at NASA or at Lockheed or whoever is building the craft or running the mission, you might have a decades-long process from conception to final science gathering and mission launch.
Yeah, some people spend their entire careers on just one mission.
Mm-hmm. What's it like to be in sort of on the receiving end of your budget being up in the air every 4 to 8 years?
Well, I've been in this business since '91 and almost entirely on NASA jobs. So I've been through presidents since the older Bush. And every time a president comes in, they change stuff. But it takes them a year to figure out what they want to change because they have higher priorities. Mm-hmm. President Obama, he made changes, and perhaps one of the biggest changes was President Bush, George W. Bush, who, after the Columbia disaster, February 1st, 2003, a year later, announced the vision for space exploration, which was we're going to go back to the moon. Mm-hmm. We're going to create a project called Constellation. We're going to build a new rocket called Ares, and build a new crew vehicle called Orion, and we're going to do this Apollo style, going back to the moon gig, and that was a big change in my career because it led me to go to human spaceflight at Lockheed Martin in Colorado.
And that lost you.
the upsurge from every 4 years having something going on with the president changing, administration changing, creates opportunity because, at least for me, this gigantic program that's starting in Colorado, 2006, led me to Colorado. But then 4 years after that, in 2010, President Obama, after his year being in office, he took office in 2009. After a year in office, he directed and said, well, hey, we're not going to do this whole let's go back to the moon thing. Let's just figure out what we can do in high Earth orbit, what we call exo-LEO, beyond Earth, low Earth orbit. LEO is low Earth orbit. So the Orion vehicle became something different. It became a test flight and an undefined mission to high Earth orbit, and wasn't going back to the moon anymore. And that was another change to me because it sort of took the wind out of the Orion sails and eventually led to me going back to interplanetary stuff.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if you've seen the news today, but according to a speech by our Vice President Mike Pence, we're going back to the moon now.
Oh yeah, it's like Facebook stocks, dude.
Yeah. That's. It sounds. It seems like the space program is sort of like national monuments to presidents. They like to put their own stamp on it, just for a prestige thing. And I wish there was a little bit more long-term consistency with it.
It's very difficult to see how the changes, ups and downs of the various presidents. Reagan was, we're going to have a space station by 1990 or something, and that didn't happen until 2000. It was a totally different thing than he envisioned. And, whereas Kennedy got his wish, but it happened, under his rival Nixon. Nixon basically canceled Apollo and sent everything off into the shuttle, but the shuttle never really met its level 1 requirements, so it was way too expensive and required a marching army and wasn't really safe. So, various changes throughout the last 30 years in aerospace.
Yeah, I mean, if I had the magic wand, I would send at least half the military budget into NASA so you can do both, go to the moon and go to Mars and do all those things. But alas, my magic wand is broken.
Yeah, my comment was, I think we're going to require world unification before we get that kind of a level of peaceful expenditure towards space.
That's something that when I talked to Steve about his interplanetary long-term mission, one of his biggest emphases is the social aspects of it, and having a peace on Earth is absolutely necessary before you could send 1 million people on an enormous generation ship off to another solar system. And now I've heard essentially the same from you. The world needs to be a much better functioning place. Is that a perspective that you gained through working in aerospace, or do you think you had that beforehand and it's just sort of informed your worldview?
No, I gained that through a lifelong study of history, mostly.
Yeah.
And when you develop a long-term view of history, you see human history from the time of the first cities has been unification of peoples. It's a long-term bringing of peoples together through travel and interbreeding. So, you just look at the last, say, 200 years of American history, and, these colonies used to think of themselves as countries and would have wars between them. There was a war almost between Virginia and Pennsylvania in the 1790s over tariffs and taxes. Mm-hmm. That you'd never think of it today because they've unified. Mm-hmm. European Union used to be all these warring countries. Mm-hmm. Over time, through things like the Google earpiece, which allows essentially the Star Trek Universal Translator to hear real time in your own language what somebody else is saying, now you can put the guns down and talk to each other.
Yeah.
So I think the world is on a path towards unification, even in spite of Brexit, in spite of Trump, in spite of some of the other, in spite of ISIS in North Korea, that long term we're on an arc towards unifying the world. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. 100 years, 150 years. Climate change is going to drive it. The new generation isn't as locked into the ideas of the 20th century as our brethren from that generation are.
Yeah.
So I have great hope. But as far as like a ship that goes intergenerational, there's so many movies, I can't remember the titles. Star Trek was only 5 years, right?
Yeah.
Generational ship. Mm-hmm. Engineering problems that we don't currently have a solution to. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And one of them is the exposure to radiation. Mm-hmm. The space radiation is deadly in doses and high doses, and the doses that you can get from a coronal mass ejection, which is one of the various burps and vomits coming out of the sun of this energy plasma, mostly protons traveling sublight. This stuff, when it gets to your spacecraft, is going to blow the DNA atoms, DNA molecules apart, scatter your atoms, and cause radiation sickness and death.
And that's all part of the. I think maybe you really hit on something, that studying history of various eras gives you an ability to think more long term, because many of these problems are a series of steps that have to be taken. We really can't just wait for the finished product to happen if we want to be a multiplanetary species, or if we want to go to other star systems. There's a whole series of small steps that we need to continuously make. And I hope that it doesn't take an enormous catastrophe like a coronal mass ejection actually hitting the planet to start getting us together.
Well, they happen, and they've happened, frequently. Most of the energy of the CME, a lot of the plasma is directed towards the pole in form of the auroras. Mm-hmm. It's like high energy protons, that is, protons that are moving really fast, and they come and they interact with the Earth's magnetic field. They steer upward, they steer southward, they steer northward, they come down on the poles, they make these beautiful green curtains of aurora, where there's not that many people living up there, so there's not that much risk.
Yeah.
But in space, there's no magnetic field to protect you. Mm-hmm. You can't really generate it with your spacecraft. You need kind of a planetary-sized field to deflect these protons. I mean, there's shielding you can do, there's mitigations you can do, but it's not like, okay, now we're safe.
Yeah. The one that seemed most feasible, as much as any of these things, 500 years into the future are feasible, would be a water shield. A thick enough layer of water, which the water could also be used for other things,
right,
would do the trick. And I've also thought that by the time we get to that level of technology, we'll probably also be pretty good with the whole gene editing thing, and our medical technology will maybe catch up with the needs that we'll have when we're trying to live in space. And by the time we're able to build a generation ship, we'll also probably have medical technology far beyond what we do now, and to hopefully further mitigate any problems that might arise.
We probably wouldn't build the ship until we had that technology of gene editing.
Yeah.
I can't comment too much on that. I'm not a doctor or a life sciences guy.
Yeah.
Engineer.
In terms of building a base on the moon or on Mars, shielding wise there, is it easier to do, harder to do, the same? Are there things, should we be going to Mars and digging caves, living in caves?
Well, yeah, that's one of the things that NASA has considered in their design reference mission for humans to Mars. Mm. That is, the radiation on the surface is, over time, is deadly. Mm. So there's a couple of things they've looked at, and one of them is to build caves way below and have the people live in the caves and essentially just drive rovers around on the surface now. Yeah. This isn't a program that's in place. This is just a study that has been done, what we call a design reference mission, which is just a concept for talking about the future.
So let's circle back to some of the ideas of the Europa Clipper, and we can speculate a little bit about life elsewhere in the universe. My impression is that the universe is such a big place, it would be difficult to believe that there isn't life somewhere out there.
That's a very common but also forward-thinking view. Most people would hold that view, and I think that's one of the really beautiful things is that people would still have that view in spite of everything else. It's a kind of a positive view. There must be life out there somewhere. Right?
Yeah.
And I tend to believe that because of what I know about the physics of life.
Do you have a personal feeling about whether it's just, are we going to find bacteria on Europa or someplace like that? Most likely will be the first thing we find versus the Star Trek style First Contact.
Yeah, it may be that pond scum is very common in the universe. That intelligent creatures are extremely uncommon. That may be the way it happens. And you can think about the random events that have taken place in the history of human development, human evolution. Asteroid impacts killing off the dinosaurs, allowing the mammals to thrive. That's a pretty strong theory with lots of evidence behind it. But it's also, if it's true, then it's random. Our existence is owed to this random event of killing off the dinosaurs.
Yeah, I've thought that. I saw a documentary, I forget which, it was about the Fermi paradox, and it made a significant distinction between simple life, single-celled life, something like that, and the leap to intelligent life being a much steeper hill to climb.
Oh, yeah.
And I always thought the recently redone Neil deGrasse Tyson version of Cosmos, for me, the most profound moment in that show came during the episode on plate tectonics, where he described the creation of Mexico and the Central American peninsula led to drying out the jungles where our ancestors lived into savannas, which made them run across the plains, and eventually they walked upright. And I just thought that's just a strange fluke of plate tectonics unique to our planet is why we're here. And that's a very... To imagine something that specific happening in a lot of different places is more of a stretch, definitely, than single-celled bacteria or something like that.
Yeah, it's a great example, the plate tectonics affecting human evolution. The ice ages also drove human evolution. Our ability to befriend dogs was... Yeah, so where were we? Plate tectonics.
Yeah, and...
human evolution.
Yeah, and dogs.
And dogs affecting human evolution.
Yeah.
And all kinds of various physical random things happening. Flowers, flowering plants. All these things that have happened in the past, so many 100 million years have affected us. And many of these things are completely random. So a theist would say, well, it's all set up by God. Look at all these random things that could have never happened by chance. But an engineer or a scientist would look at it and say, well, this must have happened many, many, many times, and we're looking at the success. We're looking at we could be looking at the only success story here.
Yeah, and it might not even just be the success on Earth. It might be the one success out of hundreds of billions across all the galaxies.
Well, yeah, we don't know how astronomical the odds are. We just know that they're very, very high. Part of this Starshade mission is to figure out one of the terms in the Drake equation, which is the number of stars. The number of planets orbiting stars in the habitable zone. What's the fraction?
Yeah. Further speculative thought. This is one that I've thrown out to people before. In the event that humans are no longer the dominant intelligent species on Earth, who gets your vote for taking over?
Wow, that is beautiful.
Of course, the Planet of the Apes gives us one option, but I think the more we learn about animals, the more we learn there are quite a few of them that, given a few 100 million years, could rival us, I think.
Yeah, as we know, a couple 100 million years, which is really only, a small, like, say, 200 million years, that's 1/20th the age of the Earth. You could say in geologic time that's not that big of a slice, but in that amount of time, we went from mice, to humans and every other mammal.
Yeah.
Essentially, the shrews, they call them, scurrying at the feet of the dinosaurs.
Yeah.
So what I think is the next, the dolphins and the whales are really intelligent. They're sentient. They're feeling creatures. They're emotional creatures. They experience love, remorse, compassion, anger. They're vengeful. They're just as human as we are.
Yeah.
Right?
That's an interesting choice too, because I know, at least in the case of whale evolution, I guess that would apply to dolphins too. They were land animals that went back to the ocean, so I suppose they could come back out of the ocean as well.
Yeah, and we would have another. Could you imagine like whales flipping around on the land on their back tail, flopping around, drinking cups of coffee?
Yeah, that's interesting because my choice is the octopus.
They're pretty intelligent too.
Seem to be very, very clever, very good at puzzle solving. Or there's videos of a octopus somewhere, getting itself out of a jar from the inside, or that sort of thing. I have to admit that the strike against the octopus, and it may apply to the whales and dolphins too, is living in the water doesn't give you a lot of incentive for developing technology.
Well,
I don't, or maybe the technology would just take a form that I can't really even imagine, you know. And in human terms, discovering fire leading to cooking and smelting of iron and things like that, I don't see that happening underwater, but maybe my imagination is too narrow here.
You got to have the proper geography. And you have to have the proper environment to be able to release energy.
Yeah.
Life is an energy releasing function. It takes energy that's stored or higher forms of energy, and it breaks it down and dissipates it as heat. And then it makes copies of itself to be even better at it. So we are just energy consuming creatures. And part of our consumption is our ways of turning, fossil fuels or uranium or all that, and dissipating that energy as electricity. Because as we use the electricity in our homes, the byproduct is heat. Think of a 100-watt light bulb. It's creating the light, but it's also this waste heat. We are releasing lots and lots of energy, and it's harder to do that under the ocean, I guess you can imagine, because you can't combust, you can't burn stuff.
Yeah.
We hit it with melting of metals.
Yeah.
Discovery of fire, that is certainly a turning point in human evolution.
Yeah, I know other people have suggested birds, crows in particular, being a potential in line there. They do use tools, but I don't know. I guess anything could happen in 200 million years.
Yeah, there was a good television show on several years ago. It was Life Without Humans, Earth Without Humans or something. Or Earth After. It was basically projecting in the future the different crazy creatures that we could see.
Oh, really? Okay. I haven't seen
that one out.
Yeah. Very cool. Hopefully I'm reaching some younger listeners who are interested in space exploration. How did you learn to do what you do? And if someone wants to do that, what do they need to do?
Well, how I learned it was the hard way, because I was a knucklehead in high school and didn't pay attention in math class, and I got in fights, and I smoked too much drugs, and just wasn't really a very good student. And went into a rock band and played in 5 years in a band, and I worked in a print shop for like $3, $4, $5, $6 an hour. And that's what I did. And then when the Challenger blew up, I changed my life, and I straightened up everything, and I got into aerospace. I saved all my money, and I paid my tuition, and I did it. I'd say the right way if you're a younger listener, say you're between your teens, and you're thinking, hey, this space stuff sounds really cool. You like some science fiction. You like blowing stuff up now and then. You like seeing things fly. Don't do what I did. Look at your high school years as a gift and study the math. Make it your own. Make yourself smarter at it than anything else you do. Just that you're gonna. The easier you make the math, the earlier you learn it, and the better it is for you. Because eventually you're going to have to learn calculus, differential equations, three-dimensional calculus, matrices, all that stuff you're going to need. Fourier transforms, a lot of heavy math.
Yeah.
That you're going to need to do the stuff that I do.
Mm-hmm. And we should probably clarify that this is not a case that somebody could just, as advanced as our computers are, the computers don't just do it all for you. You really do have to, the classic joke about math class in high school or whatever is, when am I ever going to need this? If you're going to go into a science career, even if you have computers that can do it for you, you still have to understand it, right?
Yeah, the computers just make it easier for them to teach you more stuff. And it makes it easier for you to learn higher level stuff earlier in your academic career because you have the computer to do some of the crunching for you.
Mm-hmm.
And you can do visualization with computers that you couldn't do 30 years ago. Mm-hmm. But yes, you do have to do the math and you have to do physics and you should like it. If you don't like it, you probably won't excel at it. But there are people out there that really want to do this and they're looking at somebody like me and they're saying, oh, how can I possibly do that? Well, I'm here to tell you that if you're clever and you work hard and you just focus on your tasks, and you will succeed. Mm-hmm. You have to compete with other great students, but if you work really hard, the books are written by humans for humans. The computer programs are written by humans for humans. You can do it. It doesn't matter if you're poor, if you're black, if you're female, if you're any other traditional minority, or if you're, a white guy from Georgia, you can do it. Mm-hmm. You got to put your mind to it and focus. Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's how I got here.
Yeah. And you have a master's degree, is that?
Yeah, I have a bachelor's in aerospace from Penn State, magna cum laude, and a master's in electrical engineering from University of Southern California.
Okay. Yeah, very good. So how is the job market for all this kind of thing these days? My sense from an outsider perspective is it's actually pretty good because you have so many private companies like SpaceX or Blue Origin or Planetary Resources getting into this as well. That it's not like a tenure track professorship that you just have to wait for the older generation to get out of the way. I'd imagine that the jobs are maybe even growing.
Well, the thing about engineers is that when they enter the economy, they add to the economy. And there's so many positions for engineers that there's always an addition to the economy. The economy can absorb a lot more engineers than we put into the economy. Mm-hmm. Because engineers solve problems and make products and apps. Like, what are we on now? Skype?
Yeah.
Some engineer did this, right? It's free for me.
Right.
Right? Right. This is what engineers do. They go out and they fix things and they make things easier. And they, if you have 3 unemployed engineers sitting around a table, they create a company. They create a new product.
Right.
They create a new industry.
Yeah.
The software industry was made in one of the worst economic times. It was the middle 70s. And, mm-hmm. and that's when Bill Gates started. That's when he created Microsoft. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So engineers, if you want a job, you'll get a high-paying job. Mm-hmm. And you won't suffer. You'll be able to pay your mortgage. You'll be able to take vacation. Buy some guitars. You can do that as an engineer.
There you go, kids. Now, it must be said that Mike is also an excellent musician and music producer. and he has a master's degree in engineering, and I have a bachelor's degree in music, and I can tell you, do what Mike did, don't do what I did.
I've often said that my engineering career has enabled my music career better than my music career could have enabled itself.
Yeah, I would vouch for that. I would say that my hodgepodge freelance career enables my own music well enough, but yeah, there could be easier ways to do what I do, that's for sure. All right, well, kids, there you go. Be an engineer. You heard it from Mike. Well, before we wrap up, is there anything else you wanna add for us this week?
Yeah, anybody out there want to reach me
Yeah.
and talk to me about your desire to get into aerospace? You can do that by reaching out to me on Facebook. My name is Mike Paul Hughes.
Okay.
So you can find me on Facebook.
Yeah, for sure. I'll put a link to your Facebook page on the show notes too, so people can find it there.
Yeah, I'm in contact with a lot of young students around the globe that are in various stages of life-changing. They're looking for something to change their life, and I'm always available to help.
Well, thank you, Mike Paul Hughes, aerospace engineer, for joining us on the podcast this week. Really appreciate it, Mike.
You're welcome, Sean.
All right.
Bye now.
Bye. All right, everyone. That is the show for this week. Thank you so much for tuning in. I really appreciate it. As always, you can come to the website at panfuture.org and find the show notes. Check out the Patreon link and links to other sources for where you can find the show and share it with your friends. Also go to facebook.com/Mike Paul Hughes. And check the show notes for that link as well. If you are interested in aerospace engineering and you want to get in touch with Mike, he'd be happy to talk with you. And again, my thanks to Mike for joining me on the show this week. And for everyone, I will talk to you again in the future.